It's the Real News Network. I'm Sharmini Pires coming to you from Baltimore. The election polling in the UK has been a nail-biter. The variations in polling leading up to the June 8 general election has even the bookies busier than ever. Terror attacks in Manchester and London causing certain nuanced ebbs and flows in the polls. What are the most reliable polls? What are they saying? Does the leader of the Labour Party of UK, Jeremy Corbyn, have a serious chance at the Prime Ministership? That is the questions we are going to be taking up with our guest, Thomas Barlow of Real Media. Thomas, good to have you with us.
Thanks for having me.
So, Thomas, let's first take up how varied are the poll results and why are they so varied, and which are the most reliable polls?
Okay, well, yeah, there's a few questions to answer there. First off, for the American viewers, and actually for most viewers, you're probably going to be unaware that the polling has been very varied from the get-go. Now, it's always given the Conservatives under Theresa May, the current Prime Minister, a strong lead. But even today, in the past couple of days, the polls vary between a 12% lead for Theresa May to 1%, which is, you know, a massive difference. And this is the difference between a landslide victory with an enormous majority in government and maybe a hung parliament. So, you know, and especially 1% is within the margin of error, which means that it could even become a Labour victory. So this is really important to understand what's going on here, especially as we're within a couple of days now of the actual election itself. Now, the lead has been changing fast, partially because the press have had to abide by certain impartiality rules, not many, but that certainly has given Corbyn a fairer shake. And there's other things that we'll get into a little bit later, the differences between the Labour performance and the Conservative performance. But also, the variation can be explained by the fact that often a lot of the sample sizes are quite small because it's quite expensive to do polling, and that we don't have a national system. Like the US, we vote region by region. And so it's very difficult to get very accurate polling data. And what we've seen, especially in the last couple of elections, is there's been things like anti-establishment mood that has meant people have voted in ways that are unexpected, and also what is known as the shy Tory phenomenon, which is people saying they're going to vote Labour or Progressive, but actually voting Conservative when they get in the booth. So polling companies have been trying to make allowances for this, but yeah, what we now have to do is look at which ones are the best and which ones really give us an accurate picture or a nearly accurate picture of what's going on.
And which are the most reliable ones, Thomas? What are you looking at?
Well, I've picked out three key ones that I think are the best, and most would agree are the best. First off, we've got the YouGov poll. YouGov poll uses around about 5,000 people as a sample, so it's a quite big sample size, and they do it daily, and they do it based on region by region, so they have polling in region. And as has been proven in the past few elections and referenda, online polling has turned out to be a lot more accurate than phone polling. Maybe there is something about speaking to someone on the phone that makes you say that you're going to do one thing because, but when you're actually going to do another. So online polling has proven to be best, and YouGov give the Conservatives a 4% lead at this point. So that would equal 308 seats for the Conservatives, which would be a loss of seats, and 268 for Labour. Now, to have an overall majority, the Conservatives need 306. So they'll have lost seats and not have an overall majority in Parliament if YouGov are correct. But for me, I personally prefer Britain Elects and Lord Ashcroft, who work on the basis of using a poll of polls, and using historical trends and regional trends, and not just on recent polling data. They say that the most likely outcome, around about 35% chance outcome, is that the Conservatives will get 355 seats, increasing their majority, and Labour getting 215 seats. Now, this would still be an astonishing achievement for a Labour Party that was around a month ago polling at less than 25%, 24%. They'll probably increase their vote share. They'll have increased the number of people voting for them, but because of our regional system, they'll have lost seats. But anything over 200 would be a success for a Labour Party that's been so attacked uniformly by the press and the establishment. Finally, we've got the bookies. And the bookies, they put their money where their mouth is. So these are the people to really listen to, in my opinion. We have if I just check my stats here, Labour getting the most seats, 6-1 odds, which is not great. But it's down from 20-1 odds only a couple of weeks ago. So they've shortened the odds very quickly, and the landscape is changing very rapidly. A hung parliament, 3-1, but they still have majority Tories. 1-4 favourites, massive favourites there still for a Tory majority. And what's interesting as well is that the bookies will say 6-1 for Labour getting the most seats, but 12-1 for them forming a government, which means that they think that actually other parties would obstruct the Labour Party actually forming a minority government with coalition partners. So that's what the bookies say. That's what my three favourite polls say, and we can discuss, why this has come about, why these changing polls have occurred. Next, if you like.
Sure, address that. First of all, what are the changing nature of the polls, and do you expect that things will change dramatically in the next 2 days?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, first, to address what will happen in the next 2 days, we don't know. It's all to play for. The Conservatives are bringing out their big guns, their big arguments against Jeremy Corbyn, and they've been saving these, and they've coordinated with the press specific attacks that they think are going to be the most effective. Seeing as 80% of the press are owned by 5 billionaires who are firmly behind the Conservative Party, and even the Liberal press are struggling to support Jeremy Corbyn. This is an establishment attack that will be well coordinated and could change things. Having said that, the Labour Party has grown to the largest social democratic party in Europe, even bigger than the German Social Democratic Party, and has volunteers out in marginals up and down the country right now. They're moving out of the safe seats right into the marginal constituencies, and they're fighting for every vote, and they're talking to people on the doorstep. And there's a big surge going on, not only actually in those seats, but also online, where people are actually targeting marginal constituencies and trying to talk to people in Facebook groups and on pages and in forums based in those localities. As we say, it's region by region, and it's those regions that will swing, such as, say, Bolton West or the Bellwether, Nuneaton in Leicestershire, that are the most important places, because most places are safe seats. So it's only those 70 or 80 seats that can change hands that are the really important ones to concentrate on. So whether people speaking to people and working and speaking to people online is going to change the day, people coordinating and working together, or whether the establishment with their huge amounts of money and their enormous amount of power are going to make the difference, that's yet to be seen in the next 2 days. What we can say is that the Conservatives have blown a lead, both through Labour having actually doing really, really well and Jeremy Corbyn doing really well, but also the Conservatives having a torrid time and doing absolutely abominably. I mean, usually when there are terrorism attacks, people tend to look to Conservatives and right-wingers in any place around the world as a signifier of security and and their vote share tends to go up. But what we've actually seen is not that Theresa May has been seen as dangerous, and probably quite rightly, for doing deals with Turkey and doing deals with Saudi Arabia for massive amounts of weapons, for being Home Secretary for 6 years and Prime Minister for 1, and actually us suffering 3 terrorist attacks in 3 months under her watch. So she's getting painted as someone who's dangerous for national security and dangerous for the country. Alongside that, her manifesto was terrible. The Conservative manifesto seemed to penalise not only the poorest in society, but also her own base, older voters who were looking to pass on their houses. She's also seen weak. She's U-turned several times, which doesn't paint her as a strong negotiator.
Final point here, Thomas. What significance does the voter turnout have on the election day in terms of results? If there's a big turnout, what happens?
Well, supposedly, if there's a big turnout, we see this in every country across the world, whether it's Iran or the United States, that progressives do better with a bigger turnout. So the Labour Party will do a lot better if more people come out and vote. That's a guaranteed. And as we say, that's a well-documented.
And is there a fear about turning out to the polls, given the terror attacks in Manchester and London?
No, there's no fear of that whatsoever. I think the American media, from what we've seen of it, has overblown the British reaction to these attacks. we went through, I remember in my lifetime when I grew up, the Homeland Campaign by the IRA. There was many bombs regularly, in Britain. This is not something we're not used to. And I don't see it having any impact on the amount of people turning out to vote. People aren't afraid of those things. And I think the American media has been, quite frankly, disingenuous and scaremongering if they paint British people as in any way concerned by these terror attacks in exercising their democratic rights. There's no way that that's going to stop anyone from turning up to vote.
And Thomas, what has the turnout been like for Jeremy Corbyn and Theresa May at these election rallies?
Yeah, it's been astoundingly different. Theresa May is struggling to get 12 people to turn up with placards from the local party and is trying to avoid actively at any point publicly debating on TV, meeting any members of the public whatsoever. Whereas Jeremy Corbyn was in Gateshead near Newcastle last night, and he turned out so many crowds that not only did they fill out the thousands and thousands of person stadium that they booked, but all around the outside, thousands upon thousands of people. He's filling out football stadiums. He's turning up at rock concerts. People are turning out in such huge numbers. There's never enough space for the amount of people. And what's really interesting is that there's still the talk about Jeremy Corbyn being unelectable. But what he's proven during this campaign is he's anything but that. He's very popular. The Labour Party is very popular, and they've got a huge amount of members and a huge amount of support amongst normal everyday people. And I think that could be the difference. And that's what maybe was where the polling was going wrong to begin with, which is they were taking maybe too many cues from the media and not enough from people in society, everyday people who want to change and are very much supportive in turning out for Jeremy Corbyn.
Thomas, there's going to be election coverage live from the Real Media that the Real News will be carrying at 5 p.m. Eastern Time. Give us a sense of what that coverage will be like.
We're going to have excellent independent journalists from all over the UK talking about the election, the campaign, the way it's been, making the predictions, bringing the results, and giving you the chat that you're not going to hear on BBC or Rupert Murdoch's own Sky. It's going to be excellent coverage and really the only way to watch the results as they come in. So check it out on Real Media, Novara Media, Real News Network, 5 p.m. Eastern Time.
All right, Thomas, I thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
And thank you for joining us here on the Real News Network.